President Bola Tinubu has threatened the state governors that he may be forced to issue an executive order to directly release federal allocations due to local government areas across the country. Tinubu gave the warning on Friday during the 15th Executive Committee NEC meeting of the ruling All Progressive Congress at the banquet hall of the presidential villa. The president, who was not happy with this many state governors who still refused to release the local government funds despite the Supreme Court judgment, warned that if they fail to comply with the ruling giving financial autonomy to the local government, he may be forced to issue an executive order. So joining us now to discuss President Tinubu's threat to governors over local government autonomy, if this will indeed get the governors to heed the directive, is Magaji Mato, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Great to have you, Mr. Mato. Can you hear
Mr.
me?
Mato, good morning.
Oh, Mr. Mato. Mr. Mato. Good,
yes, I can hear you.
Good to talk to you.
Yes.
Mr. Mato, isn't what President Tinubu saying, isn't it funny, saying he's going to issue an executive order? Because if you remember, President Buhari issued the same executive order to be able to ensure that the local government money gets to them. Nobody listened to it. We've had a Supreme Court ruling to that effect. Nobody has also listened to it. The governors keep running under the JAC agreement, where you have a joint account between the state and the local government. So, President Tinubu says he's going to issue an executive order because he's really pained about the matter. I can preempt by saying we know what will happen. The governor will not still listen to it. Because President Buhari did do that. It wasn't still followed. What are your thoughts, sir?
Yes, good morning once again, Mr. Rufai and the rest of the members of the crew. You see, this is just one of those issues we have been discussing in this country. And until we try to get it right, we'll continue to be in this problem. The moment you allow the rule of man to prevail over the rule of the law, these are the kind of situation you find yourself. Unfortunately, there will be no need for any executive order because this is a constitutional provision. That's chapter 1 of the Constitution is so clear and explicit. In fact, if we are a serious nation, there will be no need for any Supreme Court interpretation of this on the independence and independent position of the local government. The Constitution is so clear and explicit. So I do not know I do not understand where the need for executive order comes from. I think it all goes to show us or to show the world that this is where we found ourselves when we decided on our own to substitute the rule of law with the rule of man. Now, the governors are also citizens of this country. If the Mr. President, in all ramification, follows the law and allows the system to operate based on the law, there is no single governor that will come up and begin to rub shoulder side by side with the Constitution, because some of these issues are clear. They are impeachable issues. The local government is provided. The independence of the local government is provided clearly under Section 7, and even not just financially, administratively. But what we find is a clear meddling with the position and the independence of the local government by the governors. Probably this is so because even Mr. President himself has a lot of questions to answer in terms of respect and obedience to the rule of law. You have a situation where the moment a particular candidate is brought into power, the supremacy of his own political party takes over the supremacy of the country. So this is where we find ourselves, and we will continue to just be dangling here and there. And unfortunately, we will never get it right until we fall back to the law, which we ourselves enacted by ourselves.
So, but the governors keep making the argument for the JAC themselves, and that's their own sort of like lacuna that they run around.
That still brings us back to the Constitution. Section 1 talks about the supremacy of Nigeria. Section 1 sub 1. Section 1 sub 2 talks about the supremacy of the law. Section 1 sub 3 talks about the situation, the penalty that any law or anything that goes contrary to the letters and spirit of the Constitution remains on its own, even without further discussion, remains on its own, null and void. So when you bring in a document that you probably force your other people that the subject to sign and something like, they cannot take the place of the Constitution. The Constitution is explicit, and unless and until we get it right, because we all know that even the jack we're talking about is politically motivated. The Constitution is clear. There are 3 tiers of government in Nigeria: the federation, the states, and the local government. Now, these are clearly stipulated in the Constitution. So when you now go behind, okay, why don't you have joint account between the federation and the states? Why is it that you have joint account only with the states and the local government? So it cannot supersede the provision, the clear provisions of the Constitution. It can equally not take away the clear position as enshrined in the decision of the Supreme Court, just recently delivered. So that cannot be, that argument cannot hold water to say, oh, we have agreed that we have joint account. If the Supreme Court says, based on the interpretation of the Constitution, that the local government is not subject to the state, and the state is not superior to the local government, each of them has its powers as clearly enshrined in the Constitution. Now, how can you now come back and circumvent the provision of the Constitution to say, oh, we have had an agreement? Whatever agreement you have had, if it goes contrary to the spirit of the Constitution, that agreement on its own is dead. On its own, it cannot survive. It doesn't have the root to survive. So that is a clear position. And I think the position should be made very clear. And I know we know. We're just doing these things because we just feel that is the way out for us at the moment. Because you are now the governor, so you can afford to say, oh, let things go that way because they favor you. Unfortunately, this funny story keeps repeating itself. You see somebody in power forgetting completely the way the state should be run. So that if tomorrow you are not in power, things can still go smoothly. But you see a situation where it's only when you are out of power that you start calling for help, calling for obedience to the Constitution, calling for obedience to the law. You have forgotten that when you are there, you have the opportunity to ensure that you remove your selfish interests and allow the law to run the state.
All right, Mr. Mato.
But we are not getting that. So we'll just keep repeating ourselves and then we'll remain where we are.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that we will just keep repeating ourselves. So let us deal with the fundamental issue, and it's just the lack of respect for the rule of law. And we've seen this happen again and again, not just in this matter. You know, there are many cases we can cite. Who enforces? I mean, who is constitutionally responsible to enforce the Supreme Court ruling or order to state governors? I don't know if, I mean, as the president has said, if they force his hand, he will. He has a knife in his hand and yam and he will cut it. And that he would, let me just say, read his statement. He said, otherwise, if you don't start to implement it fact after fact, you will see your allocation dwindling. I want you to, if you could interpret that, or if you can, what you make out of that statement. Then number 2 is this lack of respect for the rule of law and who should enforce it.
Once a judgment is delivered, the duty of the enforcement of the judgment is that of the courts through the executive, because the court cannot go out of the courtroom to start mandating somebody to comply with the judgment. That is actually done through the orders of the court that should be done through the executive. So the executive have a lot to ensure that the judgment of courts are obeyed and judgment of court are executed. So it's not out of place for the executive to come in and ensure that the judgment which was just delivered by the Supreme Court is obeyed and is executed to the latter. But obviously, now substituting the judgment with the executive power, unless of course if the whole idea is to go by way of executive power to say, oh, this must be complied, the judgment of the court, of the Supreme Court which was delivered must be complied with. But you cannot take the position of the courts. You can call it not take the position of the rule of law. Obedience to rule of law is the way to go. All developed countries, developed nations are able to reach where they have reached now, and we are looking up to them because they obey, they run their system by rule of law, not rule of man. This is where we are getting it wrong, and I know it's not out of ignorance. Unfortunately, it's just out of our selfish interests of the moment, and sometimes we also become victims of some of these things, probably when we lose powers.
All right. So, no, just a second question around the dwindling of the FAC after FAC. I want you to just break that down if you could. The president's statement on dwindling FAC after FAC as a way to enforce.
Please, I didn't get that.
I said in his statement, the president had said that they would feel it in. I read out the statement to you. He said that that FAC after FAC, if you don't start to implement it, FAC after FAC, you see your allocations dwindling. And I asked that, is that a way to go? And what does that mean? If you can break it down for us, please.
Well, I feel strongly that Mr. President has the powers to make statements, and the statements of Mr. President will always carry weight. But I feel if the federal government is actually committed towards ensuring that the system works, it's not by touching the allocation of the states. It is by making sure that the system which we operate on works smoothly. Why we say so is because even when you do, we are just talking about the JAG. Even when you bring up this kind of issues, what you find is that these local government chairmen are appointed one way or the other by the governors, and probably they selected you because you are one of their boys or whatever, and to give you the opportunity to say, okay, go. You are the chairman of so local government. Now, even if the federal government also ensures that the money goes into the accounts of the various tiers of government, you still have the issue of determination, because it might not even be directly on that. JAG itself is something tangible, but if with JAG or no JAG, you still have a situation where these local government chairmen are answerable to the state governors, and they will still find a way of sabotaging the system. But to me, for Mr. President to say fact after fact that at the end of the day you will still see some deductions coming, and probably that is one way of making you sit up or making you obey the order. I feel strongly under the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, a lot can be achieved. At least the milestone of getting the Supreme Court pronouncement on the independence of the local government as a third tier of government was achieved. It was a milestone, a great one. So I feel there are so many ways this idea of obeying the law, this idea of making sure that the three tiers of government, because they were not meant just for the fun of it. To be honest with you, there are people who have no business coming to the state. There are people who have no business accessing the offices of the governor. Whatever it is, that if the system of the local government operates fine and well and smoothly, there are a lot of people who will have no reason to even come to the state capital. But you have a situation now where every single facility, modern facility, is only constituted within the states and the state capital. So everybody comes from the grassroots down to the state government. Even this, I think they are just getting it wrong. If you allow the system to operate fine, you as an executive governor, you have a lot of time to face your constitutional mandates, right, and then allow the local government chairman to operate in their own way and take care of every situation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mato. I did want to ask you that clearly when it comes to this topic, there seems to be a lot of headbutting between the federal government and state governments. Clearly, there seems to be some sort of issue. So I do want to ask you, what do you think the crux of this discrepancy here is? Do you feel as though the state governors feel as though the presidency or the federal government is trying to weaken their power? And then even if we get to a point where the local government chairman, the local governments are getting their funds directly, is there a fear of corruption, for example? So you're saying that you want these funds to go directly to the local governments. Is there I just want to ask that is there not also a fear that those funds, once they go directly to those chairmen, could also be misallocated or misspent? Isn't there also a legitimate fear of corruption at the local government level?
So you see, the truth about it is that if they think that way, and if that's the way anybody can reason, I think it's a very faulty reasoning. Because if you don't have any corrupt intention, why are you thinking that the next person will be corrupt? I think the idea should be, let us do the right thing first. Then we have a system that operates. If there is any issue of corruption from any local government chairman, then the laws are there. They are really provided, and we can use the instrumentality of the law to ensure that that chairman is brought to book. I think it's not about that issue of fear of corruption. I think it is the issue of, I want to be the only corrupt man and have access to all the funds that come to the state, so that I don't empower the chairman of the local government, and then tomorrow he rubs shoulder with me. I think it's all about this.
Mr. Mato, for your very good insight, we thank you, but it's all politics in the end, because the same president that is an advocate for local government autonomy and money going straight to them, in the case of Osun, he was overseeing, not allowing their money go to them. So that's the hypocrisy of our political system. Thank you so much.